one that really struck a chord and hit home with me. And Seamus, you were actually at a meeting earlier this week, a public meeting of family members who have children, in some cases adult children with disabilities, who have been unable to access residential respite care for going on 35 weeks now, is that right?
Weeks, yeah.
So they're really, these families are at the end of their tether, they need a break. Tell us a little bit more about the story.
Sean McMahon has covered this story before. He covered it when it first broke, and this is the second meeting in as many months on this issue. Back in September, October, the Anley View Respite Centre was closed down to facilitate two crisis cases, two separate crisis cases, and then it reopened for a very brief period in January, but then closed again because of an oil leak at the premises. And that's currently being assessed. What works are going to be needed to reopen the centre are there, but at the present time there is a huge issue with parents and families of people with intellectual or physical disabilities being able to access overnight respite facilities in particular. And this is the thing where, they're getting maybe one night and then going 6 months again before they get another night respite. And it's becoming really difficult, becoming very hard for these families. And really, the emotion shone through that at that meeting. People were very upset. People are very upset, and becoming more upset because of the stress that they're feeling in their families because of this.
But as I understand it, there's almost 100 families between, say, Cavan and Monaghan who are on a approved list for this kind of overnight residential.
And there's 300 more on a waiting list. And I spoke to one mother, and she's been on that list for, 4 years, I think.
Wow. Now, this man, Austin Hans from Belturbet, he's the father of a 39-year-old girl who, as I understand it, is non-verbal and needs to be fed. So, as you can imagine, quite intensive 24-hour round-the-clock care needed there. And this man, like many other families, is at his wit's end, and he was quite emotional at the meeting and asked the Taoiseach or the Health Minister to come and basically take time out from their holidays to spend just 24 hours living with him, as he put it, just to even get a sniff or a whiff of the reality that these people are dealing with. But something you said really struck home with me, and that's these people are not getting an overnight break to go out to dinner or to have some friends around. They simply want an overnight break to catch up on ironing or cleaning, or have some rare quality time maybe with other children in the house who are missing out because the care they have to give the child, obviously with special needs in their home, is so intensive. So it's not like they're getting a break in the traditional sense of the word.
I received a response from the HSE because we sent a question to them about, and there is something else that emerged at that meeting, that there is now rumour that the HSE are close to securing a leased premises in Cavan, a bungalow that will be able to provide temporary respite accommodation for families. Now, that is in the pipeline, I understand. The HSE didn't confirm to me about that this week, but hopefully that will provide that'll come through sooner rather than later. The problem is that if once Anley opens up again, if another crisis case comes through, they have to put the place on lockdown again, and families lose out. It goes back to square one. So what the families want is, they want a respite accommodation in Cavan, but they also want the provision there for an emergency case should it arise.
So they're not being cut off. But look, this just drives me absolutely crazy, the amount of red tape and bureaucracy that's involved. I mean, Damien, you can imagine if there was an oil leak in your house, or even a school or something like that. This is going on 2 months ago, an oil leak. How difficult is it to get somebody in to assess what needs to be done, get the necessary work done, get the place up and running again? I can't understand.
Yeah, the problem is the bureaucracy of it, that you're constantly. It's not just one person makes a decision. It's a team of people have to constantly make decisions, and maybe it's just top heavy. Maybe it needs to give more power to the people who can change lives, who can have an effect straight away.
Well, this is a school. This wouldn't have gone on for so much. Surely not. Like, you know what I mean?
I hope it wouldn't. You'd hope it
nuts.
wouldn't.
But even to get the temporary accommodation up and running, they're waiting for HICWA approval and this, that and the other. It just, with everything, not just this, it just seems to be so much bureaucracy and red tape and people unable to make decisions. And I just can't understand the hold up. And all the while there's these families, and they're really suffering and they really need a break and they deserve better. They're saving the state an absolute fortune. I mean, if some of these children were put into full-time care residential centres, it would cost the state a fortune. They deserve. They're not asking for very much, in my opinion, and it's gone on far too long. So something needs to be done. Seamus, you had an interesting freedom of information request fulfilled lately, and I assume there are people all over the county who are fed up with potholes appearing on roads and highways and byways, and wanting more money to be invested in roads to be fixed. But it so happens that there has been a dramatic rise at the county council level, the number of claims that are coming in. Motorists with, I don't know, bus tyres and spent shocks.
Broken sumps and all sorts, no doubt. It was one of those interesting ones. We put in an FOI to the council and received all the information. We went back as far as 2013, but the information that's there is fascinating to see what claims are being made against the council, and for what and how, but trying to break that down so it's easily digestible to the readers. The most dramatic one, I would have to say, was the potholes. That the number of claims has
I think you have it was
exponentially risen.
53 claims of, I suppose, car owners or relation to potholes last year, and that was 10 times more than in the previous 2 years put together. So it's obviously a dramatic rise, and it's obviously, I suppose, just demonstrates
it's a bigger story
how the quality of the roads are deteriorating. But it must be said that the bulk of claims against the local authorities still are in the public liability area, which would be slips, falls. Yeah, Damien, one case here costs them of a footpath fall over 150,000.
Yeah, and
it seems extreme, doesn't it? Like, I don't know the individual case concerned or what the injuries or circumstances were, but over 150,000 euro for a footpath trip or falls, it just seems crazy to me. The compo culture in this country is absolutely crazy, and the level of claims.
And it's frustrating because that's going to affect everybody's pocket at the end of the day. And look, somebody said to me a good few years ago, what happens in America 20 years ago comes to Ireland at that point, and that's what it is. It's a compo culture that, well, if you don't claim in these situations, you're a fool. It doesn't sit easy with me that, surely where I walk is my responsibility, or how I drive is my responsibility, and I should take responsibility for that. I think I don't know, I don't like the way it's going, but it seems to be gone past the point of
I know there's a judiciary's bill in the pipeline, and it'll be long overdue and very welcome, because I think the level of awards in this country is nearly 5 times greater than the UK average. I mean, there needs to be some guidance or something set somewhere. It's crazy. And again, as you said, it's costing us all an insurance premium.
Again, using a local man, what Quinn Insurance was all built on was reducing the amount of claim on the fact that, we get in, we get it settled early and we get back out, and they were reducing claims, and then unfortunately for external and internal factors that stopped. But that's what we need to get back to. Insurance companies have to take a responsibility on this rather than handing out big money. Go and fight, and if somebody is willing to put their own money on the line to get 150,000, then maybe, but
you're right, they settle claims far too easily they don't, they're not. You're absolutely right, they have a role and a responsibility to play in this as well. Sean McMahon was out and about at the weekend. He was in the Chagas Agricultural College in Ballyhaise, and this is a story that's fascinating to me, particularly in the context of the wider national debate on the national government broadband plan and the fact it's going to cost us $3 billion to implement across the country. But I didn't even know this was possible. There is a pilot project, the first of its kind in Ireland, being undertaken at the Agricultural College in Ballyhaise, and I know Microsoft are involved there, along with a number of other partners. And what they're doing, I'm going to do my best now to explain the science bit in layman's terms here, is they are using the redundant TV white space, so the old unused TV frequencies, and they're going to tune into that to deliver broadband internet type access for the entire campus in Ballyhaise and even some surrounding kind of properties, houses, businesses, whatever. And they're going to use this as a test case, I suppose, to see if this is something that can be rolled out on a wider scale, not just in Ireland, but in Europe. Absolutely fascinating. I mean, something I never even thought of, but seemingly unlike the satellite type broadbands we all have now, it's not relying on line of sight or point-to-point technology. This can be delivered irrespective of hills and mountains.
But that's the problem here in Cavan, is the drumlin landscape. And I mean, you speak to any broadband provider, and there is an issue there. A lot of wireless broadband providers use the thing called a canopy, and it's a Motorola network that was rolled out during the Iraq War because the landscape over there was so, I mean, it was undulating all over the place. So the canopy basically, think about casting a net out and it just drops. So, but that can only drop so far. So people at the very, very bottom of a valley, you're not getting. I mean, look. So this is interesting. This is really interesting. And I mean, you talk about next gen, and you talk about the digital hub, and you talk about all of this 5G. People are being left behind. There's no point in talking about 5G to Butler's Bridge because you can't get basic.
I know.
You can't get basic broadband down there. So, I mean, this at least offers some hope, and it's a really good story.
Well, I would contend that broadband, we just mentioned roads previously, I'll add roads in there as well, but broadband and roads in County Cavan are in the top 3 election issues in the current local and European election campaigns. Politicians are getting it in the neck every doorstep they land to in relation to broadband and roads, and they're very different types of infrastructure, and they're equally as vital to attract some inward investment to County Cavan for businesses and everything else, and even for households and home users. But I mean, I don't know about you, Damien, but I can't understand this. They're about to hit the button on a €3 billion national broadband project. I mean, I don't know what's gone on with civil servants or tech people behind the scenes, but you'd imagine surely this is something that should have been explored a lot sooner. Or
I'm not 100% au fait on the technology of it, but I do remember at the time when the switch was going on from analog to digital TV that they were saying that the big advantage was going to be that the analog signal could be used for broadband and for internet essentially, and this is the first time since that I've heard of anything else rolling on into it. So it's if the technology, firstly the infrastructure is there and the technology to receive this digital or analog signal is there, then I can't understand but why it wouldn't be used unless there's a massive investment needed for it to be used. But if Ballyhaise Agricultural College are using it, I can't imagine it's that big. But again, I don't know.
It's great.
I would be depth on it.
No, look, it's a really innovative project. It's very exciting. It's very interesting, and I'm sure plenty of people are going to watch that space with interest to see how the project develops. But it's called the Airband pilot project. So airband as opposed to broadband, but. I think people in Cavan would settle for any sort of band at this stage.
Rubber bands.
Yeah, I know. Look, we'll move on anyway. We've talked about the potholes in Ballyhaise College. Brief mention for the Cavan Walking Festival. That gets underway this Friday. It's running from this Friday right through the next Friday across the bank holiday weekend. I understand that there are about 20 organised, hosted walks happening all over the county of various levels of difficulty, and you can log on to the Cavan Sports Partnership website just to check out where those walks are and what level of difficulty they are. There's one interesting one, Seamus. It's Nordic, introduction to Nordic walking in Kilkeen. Have you ever heard of Nordic walking?
Is this something to do with skis?
I don't know, but it says it is the most sociable and effective exercise technique in the world, and you use your upper and lower body at the same time.
Piggybacks.
Well, look, that is one of the walks that does require pre-registration. Most of the walks don't. You can just rock up. But do check out the website to see some of the. And it's supposed to be a beautiful weekend. Good weather forecast promised. So it should be a lovely weekend to get out and about walking and enjoying our beautiful county.
Can I say a quick hello to some people who've joined in on Facebook Live there? Polo Frittle, who has comments on potholes, littering, and young drivers. hello to Sandra Danaher and to Martina Smith-Madden as well, and Cavan Institute, all joining in and saying hello. So,
a couple of Mullahorn names in there now.
Yes.
So big shout out to you all. And a shout out to the Mullahorn under 14 girls who beat Gowna in the semi-final yesterday evening. Well done,
Local
ladies.
derby, local
Ladies,
derby.
yeah, better get that one in there. I won't be welcome home this evening. Seamus, you've been very busy in the past week. You have a massive two-page profile done of the Ballybor-Cootehill electoral area. So we've got a dozen candidates there so far, and we've profiled all of them this week. Anything jump out at you in terms of issues, or?
Ballybor-Cootehill is an interesting one. It'll all hinge on jobs. It'll all hinge on investment. The likes of Ballybor needs a new car park. The likes of Cootehill, the new business park there, Holy Family School. We go back to respite.
The interconnector, the pylons, that's a big issue
These are all
at that
big issues
direction.
at that end, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a dozen candidates so far, though I understand. Has the deadline closed yet for candidates?
Not yet.
Is it this week, the end of this week? There may or may not be a last-minute independent to emerge, but we only have 2 more print deadlines between now and actual polling day. So first of our area profiles this week, it is Ballybor-Cootehill, and next week I understand we'll have Ballyjames.
And anybody new, let us know.
Followed by Cavan Turbot, I think is the last profile up between now and polling day. So yeah, lots of election stories and election news in this week's paper. It's worth mentioning we have some fabulous pictures from last weekend's run with Katrina and the Lara Gala